Well, here's the army that we're going into battle with, and I'm really liking this army. So 10 units, that's what we have. And here's the introduction. It shows you where you're going to enter the map from, which it always does. Okay, and what the game tells you is what it always tells you is attack straight into a kill zone and get all your men killed. And what I recommend is don't do that. So the first thing it said was attack that bridge, and behind the bridge is a fortification, and behind that is artillery. That's a perfect kill zone to walk into. And if you go over there, just like General Burnside at Antietam, you'll get your men killed for no purpose. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cross over here because strategically that's going to put me in a perfect position to come in on the flank of my own army and support the main attack. Also, I'm going to kill a couple of units over here. If the timing of this is just a little bit better, you can kill that cav unit. Not a big deal. It's going to die eventually anyway. In fact, this is a pretty easy battle. And I think it's designed to give you a ton of weapons and experience because it just seems like it's an easy battle to win. And it's a lot of fun, too. It's a lot of fun because you have a lot of units that are not yours, and for some reason, I think those battles are the most fun when you have troops that are assigned to you that are not part of your core army. You can be a little more aggressive. One thing you might want to take a look at, which I didn't notice as I was playing, and I've played this through several times. Usually I'm very aggressive with my artillery. If you want to get a lot of kills, my 6-pounders are going to get a lot of kills in this battle, but I could have gotten more. And one of the things that I did was, throughout this entire campaign, was I was a little more cautious than I normally am. In fact, I looked at it. I didn't lose any guns through the entire campaign. I didn't lose a single cannon. And my total artillery losses were just slightly over 2,000 for the entire campaign. And you might think that's great, but it's not. It means I wasn't aggressive enough. I wasn't. My artillery in this battle, and I didn't notice it until I saw it on video, is just slightly too far away from where it needs to be. It needs to be just a little bit closer to the front line to be really effective. And that means that in this battle, for example, my 6-pounders, one of my 6-pound units, I think the one with 10 efficiency, the one with raw recruits, that unit gets, I think, about 600 kills. But that unit could have gotten 1,000 kills if I had put it on the front line. Man, that cav unit should be dead. I don't know how he stepped up there and lived. But he took a hit. So, yeah, what I'm doing with this scout unit is never tell these units to go through the woods. Always send them along the road so they get wherever you're trying to get to faster. So all of this is just maneuvering into position. So I'm going to just put this on fast forward. And eventually that unit that's defending that position is going to die. So that's going to work out just fine. Normally I'd put skirmishers, detached skirmishers as I moved forward, but I've done this many times and I know there's nobody here. There's nobody to be concerned about. So yeah, here I am noticing that my artillery is just slightly too far out. And so I'll occasionally do like a bounding overwatch with my artillery, which is half of my artillery will move forward. So every other battery will move forward while the half the batteries remain in place. So you'll see me do that bounding overwatch kind of thing with artillery. Infantry does it, artillery does the same thing, bounding overwatch. So half of your guns give suppressive fire while the other half move into a better position. And then the ones in the back will, when the ones in the front get in position, then the ones in the back can actually bound forward again, and you just keep bounding forward. Unfortunately, in this battle, the front line moves so fast that I can't keep up. My artillery is always having a tough time keeping up because the battle line just keeps moving. And the problem for your infantry with that is your infantry gets exhausted. This is a pretty big area to move across, and just moving across this great distance will exhaust the infantry. Okay, there's the absolute inability of the AI to move things in any kind of an organized way. Yep, crisscrossing. The guy on the far left moved to the far right. Just absolutely stupid. I don't know why they can't get that fixed, because that just should not be. The other thing is, did anybody play Sid Meier's Gettysburg and Antietam? I did. I played a lot of that, and what I remember really clearly is a formation called the road column. Form the road column. Anybody remember that? Form the road column. It's anybody remember that? If the devs are listening to this, could we get a road column formation where get a copy of Sid Meier's Gettysburg and take a look at the road column. What would happen is the units would form up very nicely in column on the road, and then you tell them to go from point A to point B, and they would stay on the road the entire time and get a road bonus. And they would not crumple up like they do in this game, and they would not walk on each other and get extra tired and move extra slow, but they would stay in a formation and move efficiently from point A to point B. So, road column. Devs, please. Okay, you might notice that I'm not moving the guys across the river, and that's because I want everybody to attack at exactly the same time. And I also don't want to start my attack until my reserves come up. So that's something I do in a lot of battles, is I just wait patiently until my reserves get there, and then everybody attacks at the same time. I don't like to go in piecemeal. That's, in military terms, that's always a mistake. You want to hit the enemy as hard as you can with a single hammer blow with all of your troops, and you want to hit them at the weakest point. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to move my troops up and let them rest and get my reserves up and then hit the enemy all at one time. The other thing I'm doing is I have 2 supply wagons, and I'm moving one of them over to resupply my left. My left is pretty much out of ammo right now. So, and 2 more batteries and a bunch more infantry is going to come. Okay, I'm moving skirmishers forward because 2 large units of what would we call them? Auxiliary or attached troops are here, and it's just gotten too crowded. So people have to move forward just to get out of the way. But as soon as the enemy sees skirmishers, they're going to attack because that's what happens. So, yep, that's what happens. And here they come. So I had my artillery set so it wouldn't fire, because if my artillery started firing, that would have triggered the enemy too. And I just wanted the enemy to wait patiently until I got there. So I moved my cav up, dismounted. If my units get charged, they'll do a great job of throwing just crushing fire at short range into charging enemy. So that'll be great. And put all my units that are going to fight on run, so they'll change direction and fire faster. Everybody who's fighting should be on run. And sending skirmishers up to tear this artillery apart, hopefully. I generally don't like attacking an objective until there's only an hour left on the clock. Okay, normally I would never let skirmishers fight in melee combat, but what that skirmisher is going to do is hold up that infantry so that everybody can fire into it and rout it. While my left comes around and hits the enemy in the flank and rear. And these guys can now start across too. And I'm going to tell the reserves that are coming in, I'm going to give them a set path so they don't take the stupid path through the woods that would cause them to take twice as long to get to the front line. Yep, and the enemy routes. There's some canister. Nice. These units need to get across the water as fast as possible. Yep, now the enemy is getting hit in the front and the flank. And with close range artillery, so that's great. And he turns to face to his right just in time for one of my units to come up on his flank and give him a volley of fire. Nice. And these units here can get some shots on this artillery and hopefully kill it. And I'd like to get into that wooded area behind the objective that will cut his line in half. That'll be very, very devastating to his position. Yep, another routed unit. Now I just need to get that supply wagon up and get that artillery resupplied, and we're in business to attack on the enemy's right flank as well. The only bad thing about this is I really don't want to take the objective, because that starts a countdown clock, which, well, it might actually just end this part of the battle, and I really don't want to end this part of the battle. I want more time to move my troops forward. I want all of the 54 minutes, and so I really don't want to take that objective until the end of the 54 minutes. I really hate the countdown timer. This becomes an issue the more the campaign goes on. If I have 54 minutes, I should have 54 minutes, and and then the next phase of the battle starts. It should be really clear what conditions end, like there, I had 54 minutes, and yet this part of the scenario ended and another clock sets off. I think a way to handle that is if you have points in reconnaissance, that you should also get military intelligence reviews, military intelligence reports. Things like we think that the enemy is going to abandon the position if you take the objective, things like that. In other words, you should know how much time you have to do stuff and what the clock is going to do and what the scenario is going to do if you meet certain conditions. Instead of right now, it'll tell you that, okay, there's 2 hours left in the battle, and sometimes there's 2 hours left, sometimes there's 30 minutes, 20 minutes left if you take an objective, and sometimes you actually have 5 hours left because you get to end the scenario whenever you want to, up until some random time in the day. You never know exactly when battles end, and I think that's a real weakness of the game. But not it's an easily fixed problem. Just let people know what actually triggers the end of the scenario. This is a great game, and there are only a couple of things that need yet to be fixed, and that's one of them. What actually causes the scenario to end? What actually starts a countdown clock? And in my opinion, the only thing that should end the battle is sunset, the end of the day. But, that's other people might have different ideas. Yep, we're just going to walk them down and inflict casualties all the way to the river. Supply wagon is up. Reinforcements are coming across the river. They're perfectly supplied. Of course, I really want to kill this artillery. Killing artillery is always good. Yeah, and these two infantry, their job the whole time was to come down on my left flank of this part of the advance. And one infantry unit is to get into the woods, and yeah, it's you have to have these guys spread out or they'll start to clump up on each other. So kind of a broad front advance. This is pretty cool. Just keep everybody moving forward. I had the feeling when I was doing this that I started my attack just 20 minutes early. That this would have been slightly better if I had waited just 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. But it seems to be working out. Just have to keep everybody moving forward. Yeah, and hopefully the artillery can get some nice side shots. That would be great. And Keyes and Sheridan here are just in time to connect the... That's actually one division. Those 3 units that are over kind of on the left, that's one division. And it's almost like those guys are coming in at a perfect time to fill a gap in my line. It's just amazing how sometimes everything falls into place. So those 4 batteries of artillery are great, but the problem with them is that I'm going to need to capture a supply wagon to keep them supplied throughout the entire battle. And that's why I have my unit of cav between the scout and my cav unit should be able to get a supply wagon. And I just killed one of their leaders, so that's great. Anytime you can kill one of their leaders, that's a good thing. And this this Confederate unit has just turned its flank to one of my best units, and he's going to take a blast. That's not going to go well. And he's firing into one of my units that is getting great cover in the woods, so that couldn't be better. Well, it could be better, and in fact, it's about to get better. Everybody keep moving forward. It's hard to keep up with the enemy when they're retreating so fast. These small units are going to start to shatter. There's no way they can stand there and just keep taking hits. Okay, somebody's attacking, so I'm going to have my guy fall back. And I forgot that artillery was there, so I'm about to take an artillery blast to the flank, and that's going to cause my unit to rout. But I want these units to move forward because some of his guys are in the river, and you get 0 cover when you're in water. So that's a huge opportunity to inflict some losses. And the units that are on this side of the river have to cross over to the other side of the river. And when they do that, I intend to be in firing range, because that's going to inflict a ton of casualties on the enemy. Notice how the red arrow, there's like an arrow and then another, it picks up red again. That tells you where you need to be in proper firing distance. So, yeah, I had that guy fall back too far. And I really need to turn that one unit who has its flank to the enemy artillery. See, that's a mistake. Yep, he took a blast to the rear with that artillery, and that was a mistake. Should never turn your back to the enemy. Never, ever, ever turn your back to the enemy and take flanking fire. Absolutely a disaster. Always use the fallback key. Always stay pointed toward your front, toward the enemy units. That's one of the very few times that I screw up and turn my flank or rear to an enemy. I did it intentionally. I turned to fire at somebody. Thought I could get away with it, but you can't. So my army's pretty exhausted, and there's a whole bunch of fighting yet to do. And there's a supply wagon. And I need a supply wagon. And the enemy is in the river, taking devastating volleys. That's nothing but great. Get those losses. And it's hard to imagine how the guy that's the most forward unit on this side of the river is going to make it back to the other side of the river. He has to get into the water, cross slowly, and emerge from the other side. And I'm going to have all kinds of everybody firing at him the whole time. Doesn't look good for him. Getting the artillery moved up, and really, once again, I should move the artillery closer to the front. In most of the playthroughs, I am much more aggressive with the artillery, and in this one, I have them back just a little bit too far the entire time. So with the artillery, it's a good idea not to put, particularly the 6-pounders. The 6-pounders can do really good work if you put them on the front line, but I wouldn't put my artillery right on the front line while the enemy was aggressive and charging. But there comes a point where the enemy kind of runs out of steam and they're not going to charge anymore. That's the time to push all of your units right to the front line. And I have a real problem doing that, and particularly I noticed my units get to 3 stars, and then I really baby them. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do. When they get 3 stars, that's when you should put them right on the front line. So that guy did make it across the river. Of course, he's a lot weaker, but he did make it across the river. Boy, there's some opportunities to just do some damage right here. If you can catch them crossing a river, that's exactly what you want to do. And I can still pick up this, I can pick up this supply wagon if this infantry will just drive this, this one little infantry unit out of my way. I really need this supply wagon. I am not going to have, with my 2 supply wagons, I'm not going to have enough supply to keep 4, 5, 6, 7 artillery? 7, is that what? 8 artillery batteries firing the entire battle. I would have to turn some of them off. And I don't want to turn them off. I want to keep firing the entire time with plenty of ammo. Got him. And he's almost full. Outstanding. So that means I can keep my 8 batteries firing the entire time. I don't have to turn them off. And keep all my infantry supplied as well. 3 supply wagons should be fine. So I already see my new defensive line, that clump of woods on my left. The rebel right is going to be the anchor of my 1 wing, and then that clump of woods around the victory location, and then the wheat field will be the right and bordered by the river. So yeah, looks like a good defensive position. I can start to move the what is it, the 1st Division, Army of Northern Virginia, into the woods. And I'm doing something I very seldom do. I'm charging with my cav, because this is an easy kill. This is an easy bunch of experience. And we captured some prisoners. Okay, time is running out. My artillery is nowhere near where it needs to be. I need to get my artillery on the other side of the river, and that's going to take a while. I need to get my infantry across, and it's tired. And I really want to take all of the time on the countdown timer. I suspect if I run up there and take the flag that the next phase of the battle will immediately start. And it's going to take me 30 minutes to get everybody to the other side of the river. I'd like to get everyone in position before triggering the next phase of the battle. It'd be nice if I could get everybody across the river and get them a little rest so they can recover some condition. But that's not going to happen. These 3 units of the 1st Division of the Army of Northern Virginia, they can all be combined into one unit. And they make a pretty substantial unit. I'm keeping them separate in case one of them routs. The other 2 will continue to fight. I just need them to hold the flank. That's all I need them to do. And this is why I love Allied troops. I can have them take the front line because we're about to get attacked really hard, and they can take those losses. While my units sit behind them and recover some condition. That is one brave little unit standing on that victory location. Okay, I want to form a double line because I know that the enemy is going to attack. So when the front line units get exhausted and either rout to the rear or just get so exhausted that I have to retreat them to the rear by having them fall back, there are units right behind them to take their place. Any gaps in the line will be filled immediately by the second rank. Also, that means that if the enemy does get into melee, that I'll have units in the second rank that'll be firing right into the charging unit as soon as they touch the unit in the front. And then I have 8 artillery units that will all be firing canister into the charging unit. So this is really going to be set up to patiently wait for the enemy to impale himself on my bayonets. And this is the Confederate Army. Oh good, a shattered cav unit. happy. That's always a good thing to see. Cav run up and get shattered. That's always nice. Okay, I have 3 supply wagons. They'll be able to cover the entire line with overlapping circles of resupply. That's very nice. I'm going to turn my cav unit into a dismounted skirmisher. So if I know the enemy's going to charge right at the flag, so when they do, the dismounted skirmisher will do a great job of inflicting casualties on the enemy. Yep, and I'm looking at my artillery, and it's just a little bit too far back. It needs to be closer to the front line. Okay, the countdown timer ran out, and here comes Jackson. And my army is just about in place. My second line is nice, evenly spread out, ready to reinforce wherever they're needed. Most of my core units are getting some rest, so they'll be better in battle, inflict greater damage, and take fewer casualties. Yep, that artillery is just a little bit too far back. Just a hair. Needs to just be a little closer to the... I don't want it so close that in the event that the front line gets into melee, that the artillery gets pulled into melee, but they can be a little closer and still be safe. Just a little bit. Let's make sure all these guys are completely resupplied for what's about to happen. And here they come. Hopefully the artillery will lower the enemy morale just enough that most of these units will never attack. And then all I have to worry about is the fresh units that are coming up that are not getting hit by artillery. And unfortunately for me, these units are large. And they're about to get larger. Everyone's had a really good time so far. Very high kill ratio, very low casualty rate. Pretty much everybody's had a really good day. I'm also looking at the condition of my units. Okay, and Keyes decides he wants to dance all over the place instead of go forward. So I have to give him orders to move forward and to his right, so he gets where I need him to be. Because otherwise he'll just keep drifting to the left forever. I guess he'll eventually hit the Atlantic Ocean and stop. Here they come. Okay, now I want to make sure all the artillery units are hitting the guys who are charging. And I'm going to let my frontline units take the charge because, and this is one of the things that makes having these battles where you have attached troops fun, is you can do that. I would never let my troops do that. And pop a skirmisher, a detached skirmisher, and get out of melee as quick as possible. And then hit the T button and bring them back in. Okay, I let that guy melee way too long. But look at the damage the enemy took in that charge. That just broke the attack. All that canister, all that second line firing, that was just awesome. His units are awfully small. I think if I put some pressure on some of these units, they'll shatter. I want to tell some of these units to hold so they don't start dancing around. His units have got to start shattering. They're so small, they can't keep taking this punishment. That front line, 100, 200, 200, they've got to give it up. Shattered. Okay, one's gone. They're taking artillery and volleys of infantry fire. This has got to be crushing. Okay, my artillery is now way too far behind. Another unit just shattered. Yeah, if I could get my artillery up, this could really just be devastating. We could set up a real pocket here of that would just slaughter these guys. Yep, another unit just shattered. So we're taking all the little units out, but there are still some big ones left. If I can get the artillery up though, this will be really, really deadly. Yep, canister to the face and broken. But Keyes has had enough. He did a great job holding the front line. But now it's time to move the second line forward, which are my core units, to step up and get some more experience. I want to get a lot of experience for my units, but I don't want them to take a bunch of casualties. So if I can, I'll keep my guy in the woods and get plenty of cover. That's not terrible cover. But now that the enemy army is kind of broken, I'll move my units up, my core units, to make sure they get lots of experience. Yeah, ideally what I'd like to see is I'd like to see the enemy army advance, take a bunch of canister in the face. That would make them stop charging. And then they stand there and take volleys. A bunch more canister to the face, and then rout. That would be the ideal. All the while that they're standing in water, getting zero cover, and my units are in nice dense forest, getting 160% cover. So that would be the ideal. And here's somebody charging. So I don't want my right flank to collapse, so I'm going to have Howard fall back. And this isn't going to last long. He has 3 units firing into him and artillery firing canister. That's doomed. My left flank is having a terrible time killing that tiny little unit. It's been pounding on for a while. Another unit shatters. Yeah, now my artillery is almost where I want it. All those exploding shells, that's what I want to see. I want to see every shell that hits is either canister or an exploding shell. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and combine the 1st Division now. Because I think we're about to enter the last phase of the battle. So if you know what happens pretty much at this point is the enemy is crushed pretty much and has very little morale or condition left and is going to retreat into a really terrible area that's impossible to defend. Basically, we'll be in water and completely routed and unable to even fight well. So there's a little bit of a stand here, and this is kind of the last stand, and he kind of ends up in the water, in the river. And that's kind of how this battle always ends. One empty supply wagon, but the other two are still good. And I should have moved these artillery, all of these artillery units forward a little sooner. And I'm going to need guys on the other side of the river. Yeah, this is kind of just the pursuit phase. And there's not much here except I kind of moved everybody forward into the woods. And these other units are going to move as far to the right as possible. And try to avoid melee and just shoot them and inflict casualties until they're all gone. Yeah, no, I don't want any hand-to-hand fighting things. So, hit the fallback key, no hand-to-hand fighting. Yeah, none of my core units are going to do any hand-to-hand fighting. That's out of the question. Oh, I almost forgot. I do some hand-to-hand fighting, stupidly, for a stupid reason. Which I have to get out of the habit of doing that. And it has to do with capturing supply wagons. I absolutely cannot cannot escape the temptation of going after supply wagons. And I've resolved to get out of that. At the end of the game, let the supply wagons go. Just forget about the supply wagons. Yes, it's free cash. But like I said before, I'm going to have $1 million in inventory most of the game. And capturing an additional supply wagon is absolutely pointless at the end of a scenario. Usually there's nothing in them anyway, and you don't get anything for it. But over and over again, you'll see me, and I had to really see it on video, I guess, to see how silly it was. Go into melee to snag a supply wagon. And I've promised myself I'm going to stop doing that. In the next playthrough, I'm not going to charge ever. I'm not going to charge not even one time to get a supply wagon. Absolutely pointless to do that at this point of the battle. Just fire volleys. And I want to get my artillery all the experience I can, so I want my artillery units to just move forward and rack up kills. And once again, they should be a little closer. I don't need the scout to actually participate in this because he's not one of my core units. At this point, I want my core units to get most of the kills. And I should really be moving my 10-pounder someplace a lot closer. Yeah, everything is going really well. I just need to finish this up, but I can't I just can't pass up on the temptation. Look at that supply wagon. Just just begging to be captured. But the problem is those infantry units, there are two of them there that are still pretty decent size. Even though they can't defend themselves, they're still pretty large. And they're not just going to, well, they are just going to be captured, but at cost. And I could easily take them out and get nothing but tons of experience at no cost. So, okay, got the supply wagon. What a complete waste of time. And I'm going to lose almost 200 men because of it for no purpose whatsoever. Absolutely no purpose. So yep, that little detached unit got wiped out, and that was a complete waste. And he surrenders. So, okay, took out almost the entire army. About 18,500 casualties. The rest of the units do what they do, which is they shatter, and I guess they go back to the manpower pool. I don't know if they're subtracted from the manpower pool or not. Notice the high kills on some of these units. All the ones that start with 42 are Palmetto or are mine. And look at the Cav unit did a great job, and the 6-pound at only 10 efficiency did a great job. And yeah, 575 kills. That's great. So the artillery had a good day, and I don't know which officers are mine or what, but hopefully a bunch of these are promotions for my army. That's why I put them in there. Got a bunch of farmers, reboard farmers, which is great, and a whole bunch of supply. So about $3,000 worth of supply. So yeah, it's all good.